It's good to be with you, Amber. Thank you, and good to be. We were here. This seemed like yesterday, but it's actually a few months ago. It was a nice warm day during the campaign, and I heard that we lost Jimmy had the accident. And terrible. So we obviously best to his family. I know Ray's you got a great place here. Amber, thank you for your work in putting this together. And you've already heard from the experts, Rob and Matt. You do a great job for us over in Columbus, and of course Matt running the place is. Hey Diane, how are you today? So how are you? Hey guys. So let me just give you a quick rundown of what I think happened in the election, and then we'll take some questions. We'll talk about, I was at the inauguration last week. This is the fourth one I've actually attended. This one was strange, just, it was just not what you want to see in our country. I thought there were some lines that President Biden, some parts of the speech that were appropriate and right on target. We talked about trying to unify the country. But it's tough to unify, frankly, when you're impeaching a president who's already left. When you're trying to cancel half the population and not let them engage in debate, let them exercise their First Amendment liberties. So, but hopefully we can begin to come together as a country, because you all know this, I've never seen our country this divided. But let's back up for a second on the election. I mean, 80 million Americans instinctively know something wasn't right with this election. And that's not just Republicans, that's half the electorate. And you got a significant number of Democrats who have doubts about what took place on November 3rd during this election process. And if you just step back and think about it, Joe Biden would do an event where you have 7 circles painted on the ground, you have 5 people show up, right? President Trump would do an event with 50,000 people alone in Butler County, Pennsylvania. President Trump increased his vote with Hispanic Americans, increased his vote with African Americans, won 19 of 20 bellwether counties, the key counties around the country, won 19 of those. Of those 20, Republicans in the House won 27 of 27 toss-up races. The President won Ohio by 8, Iowa by 8, Florida by 3. Last time that the Republicans won all 3 of those states and not won the elections like 60 years ago. And then, of course, he got 12 million more votes than he got the last time. But somehow, he loses to a guy who barely left his house to campaign. So maybe it happened, maybe that's all fine, but it seems to me we owed it to the American people, the 80 million Americans, Republicans, and Democrats who had doubts about the election, to have an investigation. So we called for it the week after a colleague of mine, Mr. Comer from Kentucky, who was the top Republican on the Oversight Committee, he and I called for an investigation in the House of Representatives, but Mr. Nadler and Ms. Maloney, the chairman and chairwoman of those respective committees, just wouldn't do it. And I think that's a disservice to the country. I mean, you got to have integrity in your election process if you're going to continue to be the greatest nation ever, and it's that important. What happened, in my judgment, is Democrats knew they couldn't beat President Trump unless they changed the rules. They changed the rules in the run-up to the election. They used this terrible virus as the excuse to go to this mail-in voting. They did it in an unconstitutional fashion because in the key states where they had to change the rules, Georgia, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, they didn't control the state legislature. Every single one of those states, the legislature, both the House and the Senate, controlled by, like Ohio, like when Matt runs the Senate and Bob Cupp runs the House. Same in those states. So they had to go around the House, and the Constitution is very clear. Both Article 1 and Article 2 talk about the legislature in the respective states sets the time, manner, and place of elections for Congress, for the Senate, and when it comes to the Electoral College, they determine how the electors are apportioned from their respective states and who they're going to go to. So they couldn't do it the constitutional way, so they had to go around it, and they did that by going to courts that were partisan. In Pennsylvania's case, that's the best example. Pennsylvania law is very clear. It says election day ends at 8 o'clock on Tuesday. The state Supreme Court, controlled by Democrats, says no. Election doesn't end on Tuesday like we all think, like it does in Ohio. Pennsylvania said no, election day ends at 5 o'clock on Friday. They just extended it 3 days for mail-in voting. Pennsylvania law is very clear. It says you have to do signature verification for ballots that are sent in, but the state Secretary of State, Ms. Bookvar, said nope, we're going to change that. I'm going to change it, not the legislature. And if you vote in person on the day of election in Pennsylvania, you said do signature verification, signature match. But if you're a mail-in ballot, you didn't have to. 2.6 million mail-in ballots didn't follow the law in Pennsylvania. Think about that. That's 40% of the electorate in Pennsylvania. And then the third thing they changed was state law is very clear in Pennsylvania. It says that you can't process mail-in ballots until election day. But in some counties in Pennsylvania, they allowed ballots to be cured, to be fixed, mail-in ballots to be cured and to be fixed before Election Day. You can imagine which counties did that. It wasn't Republican-controlled counties, it was Democrat-controlled counties. So how can you fix ballots before Election Day if you're not allowed to process ballots until Election Day? Pretty basic question. So on January 6, 2021, we decided we needed to object to certain states where that was the template. Just understand that was the template. They went around the legislatures in these states because they couldn't do it the constitutional way. And they did similar things in Wisconsin, Michigan, all these states. So we objected as Republicans, and of course the Democrats said that, we're terrible, evil. We're trying to overturn the will of the American people. It was funny because the day that we had the start of the impeachment debate on the 13th, so 2 weeks ago, the day that debate started, Jim McGovern is the chair of the Rules Committee, Democrat chair of the Rules Committee, pretty important committee in the Congress. And he was kicking off the debate for the rule that would govern how the debate for impeachment would take place later that afternoon. He was the first speaker, and I happened to be on the House floor because I thought he might say something that I disagreed with. And he did. He said, "You Republicans tried to overturn the will of the American people." So I wrote that down. After he was done speaking, a few speakers later, I got up. And I said, guess who? Guess who the first objector was on January 6, 2017, 4 years ago? Guess who it was? The first person to object to the electors for Donald Trump. Guess who it was?
Nancy Pelosi.
No, Jim McGovern. Jim McGovern, the rules chairman. And then I go, and guess which state he objected to? You know how it works, the vice president presides, you go through the state's alphabetical order, you raise the state, you say how many electoral votes go to the president, the vice president, is there an objection? If no objection, you move on to the next one. Guess which state Jim McGovern objected to? Alabama, the very first state. Because everyone knew that really, Hillary Clinton won Alabama in 2016, right? Yeah. I mean, think about this. President Trump won Alabama by 30 points. Jim McGovern can object to Alabama, but then accuse us of trying to overturn the will of the American people when I object to Pennsylvania, where 3 laws they changed in an unconstitutional fashion, and somehow we're wrong and they're right. One thing I know, I get mad just thinking about it again. It's like this double standard. Like Americans hate so much about Washington, and appropriately so. They hate when we spend your money on, Democrats spend your money on some stupid study in Uzbekistan or something. I don't know, all kinds of crazy things we spend money on. That's bad enough. But what Americans really hate is the double standard. I mean, 2 sets of rules. They hate that. One set of rules for the elite Democrat people in Washington. Think about last week. They can put a wall around the Capitol to protect the politicians. Well, no, we can't have a wall on the border to protect the country. We got to protect the politicians. We can't protect the people we're supposed to represent who elect us to go fight for them. Oh, we can't do that. So this double standard thing is crazy. And this is one thing we're going to have to figure out. I give Matt and Rob a lot of credit. The election laws we have in this state, I mean, there's a reason why we were done at 11 o'clock at night and knew the winner and had the results the way it's supposed to work. But some of these other states don't do it right, and it has to be changed. And frankly, we're going to have to elect. And I'm talking no partisan here. We're going to have to elect Republican governors in these key states so they can take back what constitutionally belongs to the state legislature and the legislative body to determine how elections are run. I hope we can work on some things with Democrats. I really do, for the good of the nation. You guys all know, you've been stuck with me for a while. I'm one of the conservative guys down there. But I'm willing to try to find something where Republicans can work with Democrats, because I think it would send a good message to the country that we can do that. And so we're looking at if that maybe there's something in infrastructure, maybe there's something on civil liberties, I hope. Although unfortunately right now the left has forgotten that the First Amendment is pretty darn important. And this is the thing that scares me more than anything else. It's why I'm so glad I'm on the Judiciary Committee. What the cancel culture is trying to do is dangerous. You don't have a functioning First Amendment when only one side's allowed to talk. You just don't. And that is not how it's supposed to be. Healthy debate, shake hands, have the debate, whichever side wins, God bless you, let's move on to the next one. Fight the fight again later. But today the left doesn't want us to speak, and in fact they want us just to be quiet, and in the end they're going to demand that we agree with them. And it's frightening. And I said this in a committee hearing last summer. The cancel culture mob will not be satisfied with just coming after conservatives and Republicans. Their appetite is never satisfied. They're going to, They go after everyone. If you don't believe it, look what happened in San Francisco this past week. Dianne Feinstein's school, the name was taken off the school. So even Dianne Feinstein, liberal senator from California for like 1 million years, she's not even good enough for the mom. That's where the country's headed. So each and every one of us, as citizens of the best country ever, we need to speak out against the left's attack on your ability to speak, your ability to be, everything in the First Amendment, your ability to assemble, go to church, petition your government, and speak out on things you care about. So this is critical that we stand firm on this fundamental liberty. All right, are we taking questions, Amber? Is that
sure?
Okay.
You're in charge.
All right, gentlemen, Joe is ready, man. He's like, whoa, are you ready? Like, I see a hand go up that quick in my life.
With Rob Portman's Senate seat of being available, there's conflicting word about your interest in it, and I'm just kind of interested in your thoughts.
Matt Huffman for Senate. I'm ready. Yeah, I never planned on it, and don't plan on it. Not going to run. You know, Lord willing, if you all send me back in 2 years to Congress, we're just getting started with this Congress, but if it works out and you decide to send me back again, if I run again, you all elect me, I think there's a good chance Republicans take back the House. I really do. I mean, just, you know how it works, every 10 years we redraw the lines. So there are going to be more seats assigned in Florida and Texas, and we're going to gain Republican seats in those states, and that almost gets us to a majority. We only need to pick up like 6 seats to get to the majority now. I think there's a real good chance that happens, and if it does and everything works out, then there's a good opportunity for me to be the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, which I think is the committee that deals with what I just described. What big tech is trying to do with the censoring of conservatives, your Second Amendment liberties, your First Amendment liberties, so much immigration law, all that comes through the Judiciary Committee. And so I'm looking forward to that opportunity, which I hope pans out and plays out in that way. And Matt helped me be a great senator.
I heard you.
Yeah, he is a great senator, that's right.
When 2024 comes around, who do you see as the front runner to represent the Republican Party?
Well, that's obvious, President Trump. Yeah.
If President Trump decides to not.
Whoever President Trump endorses. He is, I mean, I was telling Matt yesterday, I actually spoke to it's funny because I've spoken to him 3 times this week, and he's still as fired up, and you know, you all heard me talk when we were here last fall. I probably said this to every group I speak to. I wish everyone could spend time with President Trump, because you can't help but like him. I mean, there's this. He truly loves the country, and he gets such a raw deal from the press and from the left and from the Democrats, and frankly, unfortunately, from some Republicans. It is just wrong. There is an intensity about him. He hates losing. I mean, he totally thinks like that. He hates to lose, and that's a good quality. And he loves to win for the country. So I hope he runs. I've talked to him many times about it. It seems like he's ready and willing and ready to do it. We'll just have to see. But he's going to stay as the leader of the party, and I think that's important. The party now is where I think it, frankly, always should have been. The party is a populist party rooted in conservative principles, which is where we always should have been as a party. And President Trump has brought people to the party that weren't always Republican. Oftentimes, it's Union Democrats are now Trump Republicans. Maybe I said this before, but I spoke at last fall. I was giving a speech in Youngstown, right outside Youngstown in Mahoney County, and there were like 350 people there. You know, there was a time when you couldn't find 350 Republicans in Mahoney County, right? There's 350 people packed in this venue, and I get done, and Polly was there with me. We had Jim Trafficant's family. Y'all remember Jim Trafficant? Beat me up, Scotty, Mr. Democrat from Youngstown. Jim Trafficant's family wants to get a picture with us. You think about it. First, Jim Trafficant's family is at a Republican event, and then they want to get a picture with the conservative Republican. That's the difference in the party today. It is a healthy thing for our country, where we're the party fighting for the middle class and regular Americans who make the country the special place that it is. And President Trump is really we really, I think, brought our party to that point. That's good. So he's the leader. Yeah.
I have so many questions, Bob.
You need that Trump 2024 hat on.
Oh.
Yeah.
Actually, I want him in now. I have two questions. First, when a lawmaker takes the oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution,
Yep.
and they turn their back on that, is that not treason?
Well, I mean, there's always going to be debate about it, but it's funny you say that because I actually used those words on the floor when I spoke about objecting to, on January 6th. I said, I actually think this is doing our duty. We have a duty to object when we think states ran their election in an unconstitutional fashion, because by the fact Pennsylvania did that, it diminishes the impact of your vote in the 4th District of Ohio, the citizens I get the privilege of representing. And so that was our argument, and I thought it was a powerful argument. Now, the other side's argument was, okay, all that happened, and they did things they shouldn't have done, and how they changed their election law, but in the end, the state legislature ratified the electors. And so you have the state actually saying our electors for Biden in Pennsylvania's situation are the electors, and that's who they sent, and we shouldn't overturn that. So you had those two competing kind of constitutional viewpoints. That was the crux of the debate. But I would argue ours was stronger in that ours was sort of the first principle. You violated the Constitution in how you set up the fundamental election itself. And that's the argument we made. Unfortunately, we didn't prevail. We got 130 some votes on the state of Pennsylvania, and I think 120 some in the House on Arizona. And of course, there was the tragic events that happened at the Capitol that sort of, I think, prevented more states from being debated. And of course, the people who did that are going to get prosecuted, which they deserve to be. That's the other double standard, right? You made me think of this. Republicans have condemned the violence all the time. All political violence all the time. We condemned it on the 6th and we condemned it last summer. Democrats, on the other hand, last summer, while there was rioting and looting happening in the streets, one of our Democrat colleagues said, we need more unrest in the streets. Now think about that. Democrat leader in Congress saying we need more unrest in the streets while there is unrest in the streets. That is so wrong. Some of our Democrat colleagues raised money to bail out the rioters and looters who destroyed people's property and attacked police officers.
I think she's now vice president.
It's crazy. So the one thing is we have to be, and truly we are, but we have to be consistent. It's all wrong. And we'd appreciate some consistency, frankly, from the other
So
side.
the second question is Pelosi in charge of the security for the Capitol?
Ultimately, in the end, yes. Ultimately, in the end, yes.
She set this whole thing up.
Well,
Because when Black Lives Matter came, the police were shoulder to shoulder.
yeah.
My wife and I were there on the backside of the Capitol. There were 50 to 75 policemen to hold back that mob. And they knew that there was going to be civil unrest because people were going to go take our house. Pelosi knew with Antifa and Black Lives Matter were going to be scattered in that crowd.
Yeah.
Make them.
Well, I don't know. There's going to be, there's an investigation that will start and will happen. Let's hope we get some answers. But this idea that you're going to impeach a president for incitement is, how do you incite a riot that was already planned? How do you incite a riot when your speech, the breach of the Capitol happened before the speech was finished? How do you incite a riot when the president said peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard? It just doesn't make sense. And then there's just sort of the constitutional fundamental thing that,
Well, the benefit is we get to impeach Obama then when we get the power.
yeah, which we shouldn't. Look, we don't want to play that game, but it is frustrating, and it's frankly an obsession. I've said this last week that the Democrats have been trying to remove President Trump from office before he got there. Now they're trying to remove him after he's left. Like, go figure. That's sort of the definition of an obsession. So let's hope that stops. The man with the radio station is recognized.
Chin, thank you. We know there's been problems with the polling and things like that. What are we doing and what should be done?
Yeah. Well, we need to talk about it. Senator Paul is doing that. And as I said, you're going to have to, and you hope that Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, they elect Republican governors, and they can actually say what the Supreme Court did is, no, we're changing the law. We're going to follow the law that was there before the Supreme Court and the Secretary of State just unilaterally changed it and did an end run around the Constitution, end run around the legislature. So it's always comes down to it's important who you elect. You got to have government.
Can't be done federally?
No, and you don't want that. I mean, you don't want Nancy Pelosi telling Matt and Rob how we're going to run our elections in Ohio. That's bad too. So you want that kept at the state level. You just want states to do it right and do it in a manner that's consistent with the United States Constitution. So states have had problems in the past. Remember, the last time there was a Democrat and a Republican, or excuse me, a Democrat senator and a Democrat member of Congress object to state. We've had lots of members, Democrat members of the House object, but the last time they had one from each body was in 2005 when Senator Boxer and a bunch of Stephanie Tubbs Jones, actually from Ohio, member from Congresswoman from Cleveland, objected to the electors from Ohio. So that's the last time it happened. And I think since that time, and I thought even that election was just fine, but Ohio's got their act together, just like Florida. We do it right in our state, and it's because we got good folks in the legislature who write good election law, and it's safe. And, I remember we bought a little Mad River Township, and a couple, 6 or 8 years ago, I went and I forgot my driver's license. And it's like, Mrs. Smith, our neighbor, was like the lady. But I didn't even ask her. I just drove back home, got my license, because you show your license, you sign the thing, man. It's like 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, every polling location. Like, that's the way to run an election.
But that's not going to change. So no matter how much you politic, if it were done illegally, we're never going to win again.
Exactly. Well, that's why we called for an investigation to get answers to what actually happened here. But Jerry Nadler and Carolyn Maloney wouldn't do it. So we have to stay focused on it. We have to win governor's races, and we have to have state legislators who are willing to, and courageous enough to stand up and say, look, we're going to reassert our constitutional authority and make sure we run. Take Georgia, for example, because Republicans did control everything there. But what happened in Georgia, I'm convinced of it, is Stacey Abrams' group sued Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State. Big old lawsuit, and he enters into a consent decree. He just did it because he was, I think, deep down was tired of the heat he was taking in the press. And you know how the cancel culture comes after if you're a Republican, and he entered into a consent agreement that changed the election law.
Yep.
Just him and Stacey Abrams deciding what the election law is and going around the Republican governor and the Republican legislature. That's not how it's supposed to work. But they did it, and that's how they ran the election, and they didn't have any safeguards in place for all the mail-in voting. And this mail-in thing is bad. We have a staffer, now this is District of Columbia, which is 96% Democrats, so it didn't really matter in the big picture, but it just illustrates how dangerous this is. And our staffer, at her apartment, she got her ballot mailed to her, and 4 other ballots of people who didn't live there. Now think about that, you just got live ballots just being flooded out there. That is, and we called this last summer. I think when I spoke to you last summer, we said, this is the first time Democrats are going to try to win an election after the election. Right? They want to count the vote because we all thought about 11 o'clock on Tuesday night, President Trump was going to win. People were calling him up congratulating that he won, another term. And then, of course, they start counting and finding and counting and mailing the votes, and next thing you know, he's gone. Okay, I'll take maybe a couple more. Maybe in the back here, and then we'll do the one up front, and then I'll get out of your way.
Is anybody talking about ways to pay back the trillions of dollars that we're throwing out? I mean, they're talking about spending another 1.3 trillion without even talking to the Republican Party.
Yeah, the top Republican on the budget committee.
Casting us into oblivion.
Yeah, well, I'm very nervous about that too. Top Republican on the budget committee sent us a memo yesterday, and he said, if the Democrats pass this 1-point-something trillion that they're going to pass now for the next coronavirus stimulus aid, whatever, it will take it to $6 trillion just on coronavirus-related spending in 11 months. And that is, he said in there, that's like the 3rd largest economy in the it's like one of the top economies in the world. Just that amount of spending in 1 year on one issue. I mean, it's an important issue. I get it, but that's how dangerous, where we are fiscally, financially, and then you couple that with what the new administration is doing on the executive orders. saw gas prices went up like 30 cents in 24 hours. The market's not dumb. The market sees what, when you get rid of the pipeline, when you increase the minimum wage, when you stop any type of drilling on federal lands, Russia and Saudi Arabia are going like, wow, that's great, and it's going to drive up the cost. And when you drive up energy costs, it drives up the cost for everything else in our economy. And then you think about the debt burden you have. That's a dangerous mix, because in the Trump administration, while I think we may have spent too much money on some things, we had a roaring economy. I mean, it was like the best economy in 50 years. So you could deal with some of the increased spending because your economy was turning and burning at such a good pace. Now, with I think what the Biden administration is doing, you're going to have an economy depress some, and then you have this out of control spending. So they're doing both things wrong. I'm very nervous about it. We'll have to just. I told my group earlier this morning, it's like hang on for 2 years and hope we can win it back. And then keep praying like y'all do. So that's important too. Yeah.
So speaking of double standards in the stock market, we're seeing something crazy happen this week with billionaires and hedge funds losing a ton of money by over-shorting specific stocks.
Yeah.
And then platforms like Robinhood and others shutting down symbols. It seems like that is not legal. Are we going to see repercussions from that? And then are we going to see any new regulations to stop people from over-shorting?
Maybe all the above. I certainly think there's going to be an investigation. There deserves to be one. And this is sort of like moving the same kind of cancel culture mindset and that we've seen in politics and relative to political speech. You see it now in the financial market area. So I think a lot of Americans are sort of cheering for these folks on Reddit who were Wall Street bets and kicking the hedge fund guys' tail. Our oldest son sent me a text this morning with the tweet. Someone said in the tweet, well, don't worry, all those hedge fund guys, they can go get jobs making solar panels. Right? It's pretty funny. Sometimes social media is crazy, but sometimes it's really funny. Really funny. So we'll see, but yeah, that's definitely need to look at that. You can't. So in essence, what Robinhood did is they said, time out, we're going to change the rules in the middle of the game because the team we wanted to win is not winning. And it's similar to what they did in the election. Like, well, time out, we can't win with the current rules, the right rules. We're going to change the rules right before the start of the game and make sure that it makes it so Democrats have a better chance of beating President Trump. That drives Americans crazy because we all understand basic fairness. We've understood it since the time we were on the playground or the time your brother, wanted 2 cookies and you got 1. And we understand basic fairness. Americans get it. And when something doesn't seem fair, takes Americans off as well as it should, and that we're seeing that with GameStop and AMC, these stocks that people were buying, and the hedge funds had shorted, and then we see it with just sort of our instincts on this election. It's frustrating, I know. All right, I said the last couple, I'll do these 2 here, and I'll stop.
The filibuster rule, do you look for the Democrats to try and that? That would be so dangerous.
Yeah, the question's on the filibuster. I hope not, I don't think so, but I will tell you that you never thought you lived in a country where we've seen the things we've seen. I mean, like, for example, before the election, there was no way reporters didn't know that Hunter Biden was under investigation by the Justice Department. Reporters knew that. Now, most reporters were like, that's a scoop, I'm going to report that, I'm going to get ahead of the story, be a journalist like you're supposed to. They didn't do it. So that's shocking, right? And so there's all kinds of things we have witnessed that, like, man, you just don't. You never thought that. The #1 social media account on the planet, the social media companies say we're not going to let you on our platforms. And since that time, they've lost $60 billion in market cap. Like at some point, the investors are saying, I don't care if you don't like President Trump. For goodness sake, it's a $60 billion loss for these companies. So, but they're doing it. They're doing it. So I don't think it's going to happen, but I don't put anything past the Democrats now. So we're going to have to stay on top of that issue as well. Senator McConnell is trying to negotiate how they're going to operate in a way that protects that, which I think is going to be good for us. Last one.
How can the president sign 25 executive orders? So that's why we have the House and the Senate. Can we stop him? Is that not a dictatorship?
Well, it's funny that you use those words because that's the words Joe Biden used before. He said, you can't do this, that's not how it works.
It's 40 anyways.
Yeah, it's 40-something, I think,
Yeah.
yeah. Now, the good news is, we challenged some in court, well, we challenged one in court on the immigration. The moratorium on the deportation of illegal immigrants who've got a criminal record, that's been challenged in court and we won. So God bless the folks in Texas who challenged that. I think we've got to do more of that. We're going to have to. Remember what they did? They resisted everything that President Trump did. And in spite of that, I think President Trump had the most successful presidency, certainly in my lifetime. So we're going to have to challenge these that they do. And they did a number on energy, a number on immigration. And then the one that didn't get much attention, but maybe I'll close with this, is real important. President Trump had created the 1776 Commission.
Yeah.
And the idea was to just make sure our educational system was actually teaching the things that all, there's some young people in here, but all us old folks like me, that we all learned in school about, these guys who started this country, while not perfect, were the amazing individuals who started this thing called America, where freedom matters, and checks and balances, and separate and equal branches of government, the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, and all the things. And this commission talked about the dangers of fascism and communism, the importance of the nuclear family, just fundamental stuff that make our country special. And that was one of the first 17 executive orders he got rid of. And it's like, how do you instill love and respect for our great nation if you don't teach how great our nation is and the principles it was founded upon? So I was really nervous about that one, and that he did as well. But we're going to have to challenge these in court and use and rely on some of these judges that the Trump administration appointed, federal judges, a lot of conservatives, to give us the right kind of decision. All right. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you for what you mean for our economy in this part of the state and giving me a chance to represent you in Congress. You got some great senators, as I said. I should have introduced Polly earlier. Polly's, I think she said she wanted to hang out with us today, but mostly she wanted to get some nice food here and some nice coffee. We're down at the Cambridge place. She's here too. So thank you so much, and God bless y'all.